Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I have with me today Nisha Biswal. She is the Senior Vice President for International Strategy and Global Initiatives for the US Chamber of Commerce and also President of the US-India Business Council. Welcome to ThePrint, Nisha, and thank you for talking to us once again.
It's wonderful to be here with you, Nayanima.
Thank you. Nisha, of course, the first question to you will be on the big visit that we just had of Prime Minister Modi visiting DC and New York. And I mean, even though the fact that Prime Minister Modi and President Joe Biden, they had a virtual Quad summit, they had been talking over telephone and other things, but this was special, this was in person, and many things came out of the visit, which we'll eventually come to know. But to begin with, it seems the focus really is back on trade. What is it that you're hearing from the American companies? And do you think this is time that we really need to get going on the small trade deal that was being discussed about? If you can shed some light.
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just reiterate what you started with, which is that the visit itself and the in-person meeting between the president and the prime minister, between the vice president and the prime minister, as well as, of course, the in-person Quad meeting, that was incredibly important. It was important because while you can have virtual meetings, that kind of an in-person bilateral meeting over an extended period of time is so important to getting all of the members of government on both sides to really see and understand the importance and the priority that this very special relationship has for the leaders. And I can tell you that there was, from what I have heard, a very warm rapport between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi. And I think that was very important for both leaders to demonstrate across both of their governments, because that will help all of the various parts of the US government and the Indian government that have to carry the work forward to understand that this is a leader level priority. I do believe that the one piece of this important relationship that has not been as robust as the others is the economic partnership and the trade relationship. I think that the prime minister came this time with a real focus on and ambition on trying to advance that economic partnership, to explore a deeper trade relationship. And hopefully there will be some conversations in the coming weeks that the working level of our respective bureaucracies can engage on and see what is possible. Because frankly, it is long past time for the US and India to get serious about a trade relationship. I think the small trade agreement, which we spent 4 years of the Trump administration trying to carry across a finish line, is not necessarily the starting point for the Biden administration with Prime Minister Modi. I think that the prime minister has a bigger goal in mind. I think that the Biden administration right now has not been as focused on trade, and we need to really find the ways and the incentives that bring trade into a more sharper focus. We cannot have a trade agreement in the Indo-Pacific, TPP, that excludes the two largest economies of the Indo-Pacific, the bookends of the Indo-Pacific, the United States and India. So I think we need to work on our bilateral and our regional engagements, and I'm hopeful.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very interesting point, Nisha, what you said, that, while there'll be a TPP, there's also going to be an RCEP, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, that's going to come into the picture very soon. So as you rightly said, that maybe the trade deal, the small trade deal, is not in the scheme of things within the Biden administration. But I do believe there is this intent to start the India-US Trade Policy Forum. And if that begins, because that last met essentially in 2017, do you think then probably we can progress to having the limited trade deal? Why am I asking is that because India believes it has put in a lot of energy in getting those, the early harvest scheme and a low trade deal. If that does not happen, then do you think the TPF probably will set things straight? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think it would be fantastic to get the smaller deal done, because it does show kind of a proof of concept that the US and India can negotiate on items, can conclude a deal, and can move forward. So I think if we can get both sides to just bless the agreement that had already been put in place tentatively and make it final and formal and official, I think that that would be fantastic. I haven't heard the inklings from either government that that was their priority or their focus, but I can tell you from the business community perspective, we are all in support of that. I think the Trade Policy Forum is an important place to start when our trade leaders come together and meet later this year, hopefully, to set a more ambitious goal for what can be achieved. And I think that is something that we will all be looking very closely towards, and to see where we can do that. All the talk about trying to, collaborate on 5G, on advanced technology, all of the ambitious goals that have been outlined through the Quad, none of those are really possible if we don't push forward on a more robust trade agenda. So I think that understanding is starting to emerge, and I hope that means that we can have a more constructive path forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very interesting, because even within the Quad, India is now seriously looking at having an early harvest scheme, a small trade deal with Australia, and probably that will be followed by a larger CECA. But coming to Quad as such, as you said that, trade has been largely ignored, but we're seeing that India and US are really progressing fast and in an unprecedented manner when it comes to strategic ties. Now, keeping that in mind, do you think at least under the Biden administration we'll see some kind of rise in investments? Recently, the Modi government did some kind of reforms in terms of the PLI scheme and the national monetization pipeline. But on the other hand, we also saw a Ford Motor Company walking out of India. So how do you make all these things between these two countries when it comes to large scale and big ticket investments?
I think that India has taken some very important steps with the PLI schemes, with the policy on retroactive tax liability. I think those have been extremely well received by industry. And I suspect that you will continue to see robust FDI. The question is, can you turn a steady increase in FDI into really a tidal wave of FDI coming in, because that's what India needs. And I think that is possible. It requires just a very focused effort. There are some strong headwinds that need to be overcome, including, the COVID impact on the global economy, on the Indian economy, on consumption. That has made investment decisions that much more cautious and careful. And so it does require much more aggressive policy reform from governments to overcome that reticence that many companies have, less cash on the books, and therefore some more cautious thinking. On the other hand, there is a desire to de-risk on supply chains, to create more diversification. And so the opportunity is there to see more of that coming towards India. It is an important time for India to stake its claim and its place as a global leader on the economic side of things as well.
Mhm. But in a post-pandemic situation, as you said, that yes, certain reforms have been taken, but are the American companies satisfied with what is going on? Do they think that, probably they would need to do more, or what is it that they're exactly telling you that they need from the government now going forward? Because as I said, in a post-pandemic situation, things are going to get tougher.
They need to see robust market access, unfettered market access, right? And while India is very keen to attract manufacturing into India, supply chains are complicated, they are global. And when you have a lot of restrictions on how much of the content has to be India based, by what time, all of these things inhibit investment decisions because they're complicated. They add a lot of complexity into what the supply chain looks like and how much you can take advantage of what India is offering and how much access you will have to the Indian market. India right now is not part of very many free trade agreements. And so India is not an export destination very easily for very many companies to make in India for the export market. For India to create an export-oriented economy, it needs to have more of those bilateral and regional trade agreements that allow for that market access into other economies. Therefore, right now, what is driving investment into India is access to the Indian market. And India needs to create a level playing field for investors coming in. The second thing I would say is stability in the policy environment, regulatory stability. When you have huge investments coming in the e-commerce space or in the digital and technology space, they want to see a regulatory environment that is going to be stable so that they can build the business and grow the business. And when you continue to see volatility in the regulatory environment, that tends to spook large-scale investments, many of which take a decade or so before they come to maturity. So in that decade, you need to have some stability that can help you to really build your business and mature your investment. So those are things that I think India is making some progress on, but certainly I think investors would like to see more of. Again, these are going to be topics that we'll be taking up in depth over the next couple of days and into next week as well.
Mm-hmm. So, Nisha, coming to the e-commerce rules, we've just had Indian government talking about, the e-commerce rules that it wants to roll out. And we are also seeing the kind of hurdles that are being faced by Amazon, the controversies around it. No matter how much an Indian consumer would like to have Amazon beside them, there is this constant tussle that is going on for last 3-4 years. Do you think that is going to be the next big issue between India and US when it comes to e-commerce rules?
Well, look, I'm not going to comment on any particular company or any particular policy, but I will just say, we are at the very nascent stages of e-commerce in India. And what the pandemic has taught us is that this really is the commerce platform of the future. Increasingly around the world, what you're seeing is that consumers are choosing e-commerce as the platform. Now, for India, there are 2 or 3 key opportunities here. One, of course, you have the large consumer base and the extent to which you can grow the e-commerce platforms. And I think there's plenty of space for multiple platforms. Amazon might be, a large platform, but there are so many both multi and single, source platforms, and e-commerce is increasingly become, whether it's on resellers like eBay, India's own Flipkart or other platforms. it is really the wave of the future economy. So one is India's own consumer base, but the second really important thing as you look at global markets and global supply chains is how Indian suppliers can increasingly be featured on these platforms for a global market. So the more that India encourages the e-commerce platforms to grow and flourish within India, the more that Indian suppliers will be able to also grow their global markets. And I think that that's a very important aspect. And then finally, it's also the way in which Indian consumers can attract efficient, high quality, and cost-sensitive products into their homes, right? So I think there's the benefit to the consumer, there's the benefit to the Indian suppliers, and then there's the overall economic benefit that needs to get factored in.
Mm-hmm. Nisha, now coming to the defense trade, and this is something I'm sure is going to be the focus of the India Idea Summit. So to understand, the Chief of Defense Staff was there recently in the US. He met US Defense Secretary. Do you think, and the fact that now in India, the flavor and the need is definitely of, militarized drones. Do you think that, that is an area where in defense trade, both sides can see an uptick?
I certainly do think that the United States has made available just an unprecedented amount of advanced technology in the defense partnership, in the defense trade and technology arena. And so it now is to India on being able to action against all that has been offered, including on drone technology. So many of our defense companies have located significant parts of their supply chains in India. The scope to grow that is greater. And so the extent to which the US and India build that defense partnership, it benefits not only India's ability to modernize and scale its own military, but also for India to be part of that global supply chain in partnership with some major US and Indian defense companies to be able to provide, cutting edge technology into the global market as well, and other strategic partners.
Mm-hmm. But then the obvious question also that comes up is that of China. Now, I remember when I last had a conversation with you, you talked about a 1+ strategy. You said while China is important, India is also important. But do you think India is doing enough to be that, alternative for China?
Well, I don't think that this is a zero-sum dynamic. I think that, when we look at a global economic ecosystem, what you want to do, what more and more companies are looking at is, as you said, the +1 strategy, the diversification and regionalization strategy, making products closer to the markets for which they're intended rather than having everything built into one ecosystem. That requires then the changes on the government side as well to really bring those investments in. And I think the government understands that, has recognized that. I think the PLI schemes are an effort to essentially move in that direction. Is India doing enough? I mean, from a trade body perspective, I would always say that there is more that can be done. And so the movements that have been made are positive. They've been well received. And I think additional movements in that direction will certainly help India's case.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nisha, my last question then to you will be, as of now when we are seeing how things are, panning out, there is an AUKUS that is also shaping up. between Australia, US, and the UK. Then there is Quad, and we are now getting to hear that AUKUS is going to be a complement to Quad. Now, within all this, how do you see American businesses operating out of China? They are going to perform. Are they going to look at other countries seriously? Are they going to leave China? That will be a very difficult proposition. And we are also getting to hear that maybe that the Biden administration is going to review the US-China deal. So within all this, do you think India stands to benefit?
Of course it does. Look, I don't think anyone is leaving China, right? I mean, I think China is, one, a huge market, and two, a huge, effective, efficient manufacturing base. There is a lot of investment that has gone in to make China into a very cost-effective place to produce. And that is not changing anytime soon. But I do think that increasingly companies are looking to broaden the base of where they produce, and there India stands to benefit. And that's where India has an enormous opportunity because it has all of the things that are necessary. It has a sizable market. It has a very sizable labor pool. It has infrastructure, although I think more investment in infrastructure, more investment in labor and skilling, more investment in energy and water, all of the things that are necessary to create the major output. And then, you know, much easier access to the Indian market. All of those things will help India to attract much larger scale investment in manufacturing and production. So I think that that is clearly the wave of the future. The trajectory is going to for sure be on a incline. It's just a question of, are you going to grow at this pace? Are you going to grow at this pace? You know, we need to see what measures can really create an accelerated model of growth for the economy and for investment as well. But before we go, I have to say, look, I hope all of your viewers will turn in for the USIBC India Idea Summit that is going to be showcased over the next couple of days on the 6th and 7th of October. We've got a fantastic lineup of both on the strategic side of things, the trade and economic side, the technology side, with a fantastic lineup of speakers ranging from Minister Piyush Goyal, Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Minister Pradhan, certainly the foreign minister and the foreign secretary on the India side, and many, many more as well on the US side with Secretary Kerry and Minister Yadav, with Samantha Power, Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman. And we've got just some fantastic armchair conversations and panel discussions about the very topics that we've been discussing today. So I hope that all of your viewers will tune in and join us for the India Idea Summit.
Sure, definitely. Thank you so much for talking to us, Nisha, and all the best for the India Idea Summit 2021.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to see you, Nayanima.
Thank you.